Welcome back to 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Glad to have you along on this Thursday afternoon. Of course, in coastal Georgia, it's all about getting ready for Georgia, Florida. And joining us here on the program from Bulldog Illustrated, this will be his 53rd consecutive Georgia-Florida matchup. Murray Poole joins us. Murray, good afternoon. How you doing?
Good, Kevin. How you doing?
Doing well, and this will be your 53rd consecutive. I would imagine Georgia fans have to feel about as confident as they have in the last decade or so heading into this football game that it's going to turn out in their favor.
Yeah, first of all, just thankful, good Lord, give me the help to see this many straight games. It started in 1962, Kevin, when I was a student in Georgia, and I just kind of carried it on since I'm down here in South Georgia now, an hour away. But, I think the Georgia fan base, especially after the good showings against Missouri and Arkansas, are pretty high, and Florida's trouble. We all know Muschamp fight for his job. I think they are, but when I hear stuff, Kevin, like we're going to blow them out and all that, I say, wait a minute. I said, you got to know the history of this series. It just doesn't happen more often than not. There's been a few blowouts on Georgia's side back in Coach Dooley's years, 44-0, one of the big ones in 82 when Herschel ran for about 219 his last year at Georgia. But for the most part, the ones that are heavy favorites, it doesn't happen that way. I go back just last year, 23-3, Dogs lead. Arthur Lynch drops a pass out in the flats, doesn't recover it, think it's a complete pass. The Gators recover, and here they come, 23-20 final. So I just look for Florida to play the best game, Kevin, and the defense is probably the best run defense the Bulldogs have faced this year. So anything can happen. You'd think if Georgia's ever going to win comfortable, it's this year. But like I say, the history of this series always points to close ball games in this rivalry.
Murray, where have you kind of come down on the whole Todd Gurley thing here? He's obviously not going to play, but Nick Chubb is certainly looking more than capable of filling in.
Yeah, it was a surprise, the announcement yesterday of 4 games up to the Auburn game, Kevin, because I think the Bulldog Nation, even Coach Rick, and seemed like the coaching staff had hinted that he's going to be back for the Gators. There's a 2-game suspension. But something happened, I think, between the $400 we heard he got for, signing memorabilia, and then it comes out as $3,000. So I don't know. You don't know if Georgia uncovered this something between the time they tried to declare him to be eligible to send to the NCAA last Wednesday, or the NCAA did some investigation on their own and found more of this, and both sides just put it all together. And then here is the Bulldogs appealing. You don't know. You wonder what kind of appeal they have. If it was $3,000 over 2 years, that's pretty serious. And I've talked to a number of Georgia fans. I think we really think that, he was lucky just to get the 4 games. If it was $3,000 over 2 years, it could have been the rest of the season.
Murray Poole, Bulldog Illustrated, joining us here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. And Murray, I know anytime you have great players and things, the guys that get overlooked are those linemen doing the blocking. But you look at what has happened with Nick Chubb, with Todd Gurley, and so much of the focus there. Has the offensive line kind of got lost in this, and where does those 5 guys up front kind of rank in your historical perspective to some of the lines we've seen at Georgia?
Yeah, I think they're the unsung heroes, Kevin. You hear the good job they're doing everything, but I don't think they're getting enough credit. Of course, great running backs will make a line look great. The way the Chubbs run, and certainly Gurley, they can just take a small opening and turn it into a big gain. But that said, this line has played together all year. The staff is very seldom substituted, Kevin. With Theus across the front, Brandon Kublano, center, then David Andrews, and then, right on across that line all the way to, Colton Houston, and the right guard, who I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on his name, the big guy that stepped in this year. But they've played together. In fact, after the Arkansas game, I was filling my rental car with gas. I ran into a dad of a Georgia reserve lineman. He said, I thought my son's going to get in the game in the second half, but I think the only reason he didn't, because, Arkansas started putting it together with that passing game, making a big run at Georgia, and it got a little closer than it was comfortable there after the big blowout first half. So I think just making that point that offensive line has played together that whole year together, and they haven't substituted in. I think they've got to know each other, and they've got a good rapport, and they're confident, Kevin, if they could move the ball. I think that shows at 265 yards a game, the Bulldogs leading the SEC in rushing, and certainly, with great backs, and they've made certainly Nick Chubb look good. I think getting past the line of scrimmage several times. Of course, Chubb is quite a running back himself. And going back to Chubb, Kevin, I think he's a little different runner than Todd Gurley, but he kind of reminds me a lot of Herschel Walker, where he leans forward into the guy trying to make the contact with him. You hardly throw him for negative yardage. He's got speed. He showed outside against Arkansas for the 43-yard run, but he reminds you of Herschel a lot, leaning forward, not a lot of juking, planting his foot and cutting like Todd Gurley, shake and bake with his tremendous power too. But I think they're in good hands this Saturday down there with Nick Chubb. It's he's not a Todd Gurley like BJ and y'all have talked about this week, but he's a guy, 345 yards in 2 games and 68 carries. So you feel confident that he's going to have good runs, and the offensive line's going to have to step up, maybe play one of their best games against the Florida defensive front. It's really going to be pumped, Kevin.
Murray, is that the game plan? Murray, is that the game plan to give him 35, 36, 37 carries once again?
I think so. They say Sonny Michel, Coach Rick kind of went back and forth this week, saying Sunday night he said, I think he might have a chance to play. Monday night on his hotline, he says, no, I don't expect to see him. Keith Marshall yesterday was having a good practice, and Coach Rick said you might see Keith in there. But I'm wondering, like everybody else, I don't know, see the carries for Keith Marshall still being a little tentative coming back from that knee surgery, Kevin, and an ankle injury. I just think it's going to be, like you say, Nick Chubb, 35 to 40 times a game. Brendan Douglas coming in, when the Gator defense is a little tired. That's got to be the game plan. Yet I'm really looking for the Florida defense to maybe slow Georgia's running game down some. And I think for the first time, this is really even more so going to put the game in the hands of Hudson Mason to make some plays. And certainly he did that first quarter against Arkansas. People said he got the arm to throw downfield. He hit the 40-something plus 48-yarder to Chris Conley, and then he came back with a 36-yard touchdown pass later. So I think Hudson Mason's gained a lot of confidence, and I just think they're going to have to balance both ways against this Gator defense. Because this Gator defense, Kevin, we know they've got to carry the game for Florida, even with a freshman quarterback starting. I think you're putting a lot if you ask the Florida offense to carry this game.
You're absolutely right. That was actually my next question. How much of an X factor do you suspect Treon Harris will be for the Georgia defense, trying to figure out what they're exactly trying to do with him? He's only played in a handful of games, a handful of snaps.
Yeah, you're right. I think, certainly, this junior quarterback, Jeff, he's had so many turnovers that Coach Muschamp feels he's got to go, with the young Treon Harris. And I think he's got the quick feet, Kevin. He can make things happen, turn a bad play into a good one with his feet. And that said, so he's an athlete, but at the same time, y'all probably missed that this week, playing on this big stage, biggest game he's ever played in, with 40,000 people on each side of the field. How is he going to react to the pressure? And I think Coach Pruitt, that's his game plan. I would think it would be going to really dial up the pressure on this freshman quarterback, make him uncomfortable from the start. Don't let him escape and turn a pass play when there's nobody open into a 10, 12-yard run. So I think you're going to see Lamar, Floyd and Jenkins and just the outside linebackers bring a lot of pressure on Treon Harris this coming Saturday. So it'll be interesting to say, but sometimes a great athlete can overcome the pressure, and they say he's kind of a cool customer under fire, or Coach Muschamp wouldn't be named as the starter for this football game.
Murray, how do you feel about this Georgia defense and what they've been able to do thus far this season?
They've really come on. I think that's been the big story. I don't think, Kevin, they would have won, unfriendly locales in Missouri and Arkansas if that defense hadn't really stepped up coming every game. The secondary is a lot more confident now. They're kind of buying into what Coach Pruitt wanted to do. They've been working on that since the spring. They were a little shaky in the first few games, but I think he's got the people he wants to play back there now. And certainly, Brendan Langley, in fact, is one guy you can point to. He was a starter at the first of last year, but then he got out of Todd Grethle's good graces, and we didn't see him anymore the rest of the season. Then they moved him to wide receiver at the start of this season, and all of a sudden he's back. Then against Missouri, there he is starting in the secondary and played pretty well. So, certainly Damian Swan, after a 4-year last year, stepped up, having maybe an All-SEC type year, Kevin. And it's just come together, and I think especially what was encouraging, like we talked about the outside linebackers, Floyd and Jordan Jenkins had really big games against Arkansas and put the pressure on it. But I think that's going to be the key. To answer that in sum it up, I think the defense has really come on, and that's where Georgia's got a chance, really, without Todd Gurley, to win these 4 straight and go into the Auburn game on November 15th, really on a roll, and have a chance to still determine their own destiny as far as get to the SEC championship game, win that, and you win that. If Georgia wins that, there's no question they're going to be in the Final Four, Kevin. I mean, as SEC champions with 1 loss, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But first of all, got to take care of business against the old nemesis down in Everbank Field Saturday.
Absolutely. And Murray, finally wanted to ask you about Will Muschamp. You've covered Georgia for a long time. Muschamp, a former player, didn't have a lot of success against Florida as a player. Now on the other side, a guy who was considered one of the best defensive coordinators, and to his credit, the defense of Florida is very, very good. But a lot of folks talking about he's on the way out and just has not been able to put it together at Florida. What do you think's been the biggest, impetus to them having success at Florida under Will Muschamp?
Well, I think, like you mentioned, I think he's a heck of a defensive coordinator, at Texas and, even at Auburn, and Kevin, and, he just never seemed to, jive with him as a head coach. We know that a lot of coordinators are just not head coach material, no matter how good they seem, and he has built a fine defense. And, of course, he went 11-2 a couple of years ago, and everybody thought he had it going, but the last 2 years has been kind of disastrous in Gainesville, and I think it lies with the offense, Kevin. Despite changing coordinators this year, get the new coordinator to come down. Everybody thought it was going to be a lot better. They're still struggling. And he hadn't had a quarterback that could take charge in his last 2 years and do the job. And I think that's where a lot of the problems rise. And the receivers are dropping balls, I understand, this year. And, the quarterback play and just the whole offense just not clicked to complement that defense. And they've left that defense on the field so many times, the big turnovers, and the Gator defense will come in with their backs to the wall, back on their own 30 or 20-yard line, having to defend a short field, and it's been tough. So, but I think that's the biggest reason. And if Georgia would have kind of put it on the Gators pretty good, we might have an announcement Monday. I really believe so. I think he's going to wind up on his feet, though. Whatever happens, I think he could. A lot of schools would love to have Will Muschamp as a defensive coordinator, Kevin.
Murray Poole, Bulldog Illustrated. Murray, appreciate the time. Enjoy your 53rd straight coming up on Saturday.
Okay, Kevin, I will. And y'all have a great day and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Will do. Appreciate it. Murray Poole, Bulldog Illustrated, joining us here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. 53 consecutive Georgia-Florida's coming up for Murray this weekend. And outside the last 20 years or so, I would imagine this has to be about as confident as Georgia fans have been heading into the Georgia-Florida showdown there in Jacksonville. You got the better offense. Defenses are pretty comparable. You got a lot more momentum. You don't have a freshman quarterback making his first start like Florida does. And you just have a lot more positive vibes around the program than do the Florida Gators. A lot of positive things play in the Gators' favor for this game coming up on Saturday. We've got so much more to get to here on the program. Vince Dooley will join us in the final hour of the program. And we're talking Georgia-Florida as we get ready for that big showdown once again in Jacksonville. You're listening to 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We're online at ESPNCoastal.com and on the ESPN Radio app.